Hi, I'm Nolan, 35. And last fall, I became that guy, the one whose dad tried to sneakily gift his house to a cousin he hated growing up, during my own honeymoon. Let me back up. I'd just gotten married to Layla, my best friend, my forever person, my co-conspirator in everything from buying vintage records to plotting murder, in Clue, I promise. We'd saved for 2 years to afford a modest but charming wedding, and after the ceremony, we jetted off to Croatia for 10 days of eating squid ink pasta and pretending we weren't coming back to our inboxes. What I didn't know then was that my father, Richard, had been waiting for this window like it was a Mission Impossible countdown. I mean, apparently, the man had plans, and not the fix the bathroom tile kind. I got the first inkling something was off when our neighbor, Mr. Kessler, texted me 4 days into the honeymoon. Hey bud. Everything okay? Saw movers at your place yesterday, thought maybe you were back early? Movers? I blinked at the message, thinking maybe it was a mistake. We didn't hire movers. We weren't even home. I called him immediately. Kessler, it's Nolan, what do you mean movers? Oh yeah, he said casually. A couple guys in a white van. Said they were with your family. There was a woman too, blonde, maybe 50s. Looked a little like your Aunt Valerie? Valerie. I felt the kind of creeping dread you only get when your childhood arch-nemesis is somehow back in your living room. Valerie wasn't just my dad's cousin. She was a walking grudge. And not just with me, with everyone. At family reunions, she'd show up in mink and leave in rage. And now she was, what? Moving into my house? My stomach turned. I called my dad. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. On the third try, he picked up. Nolan! You should be relaxing. How's Dubrovnik? No, I snapped. Don't Dubrovnik me. Why were there movers at my house? What is Valerie doing there? Silence. Then, you're overreacting. I just told her she could store a few things there. Temporarily. The basement's basically empty, and you're not even using the guest room. It's family. I had to take a full 5 seconds of silence to keep from yelling on a Croatian beach surrounded by people drinking spritzers. Dad. You gave someone access to my house. Without asking me. While I was out of the country. He scoffed. You act like I'm some stranger. I have a key. Yes. A key I'd given him in case of emergencies. Not Cousin Valerie's storage locker of vengeance. That night I couldn't sleep. Layla kept rubbing my back saying, breathe. We'll fix this when we get back. But I had a feeling we were only at the beginning of something much, much worse. The morning we landed back in New York, I didn't even stop for a bagel. We Ubered straight from JFK to our house. And sure enough, Valerie's white Lexus was in the driveway, parked at an angle like it owned the zip code. I felt Layla tense beside me as we stepped out. Okay, she said, calmly tying her hoodie around her waist like she was about to coach a little league team. Let's find out just how temporary this arrangement is. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it open to the smell of sandalwood candles and, was that Tuna casserole? The living room looked like a Pier 1 clearance aisle. Floral throw pillows. Some god-awful glass rooster statue on the coffee table. My record player, the one Layla had bought me for our anniversary, moved to the floor to make room for Valerie's antique lamp. And then she appeared. Oh, Nolan! Valerie chirped, stepping out from the hallway like she'd just been interrupted hosting Live with Kelly and Ryan. She was wearing a silk robe and pink slippers. You're back early. I stared at her. We said 10 days. It's day 10. She blinked innocently. Oh. I must have counted wrong. Jet lag messes with your sense of time. Layla cut in. Why are you living here, Valerie? Oh, I'm not living here, she said quickly. Just staying. For a little while. Richard said it was fine. And there it was. Richard said. I turned on my heel and headed to the basement. I had to see it for myself. She'd moved everything. Her boxes. Her books. Even her cat, which hissed at me from on top of a box labeled, Crystal, do not touch. Layla followed, mouth slightly open. She's squatting in our house. She whispered. She's nesting. I muttered. like a vulture. When we went back upstairs, Valerie had poured herself a mimosa. "I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding," she said, smiling tightly. "Richard said I could stay here until I close on my new condo. It's just a few weeks." "You said temporary storage," I snapped. "Right. And me is part of the storage," she said with a little laugh, like we were in on some joke together. Layla sat down across from her, calm but sharp. "Valerie, we didn't agree to this. You weren't invited to move in. You weren't even asked?" "Well, I'm family," she said with a shrug. "I thought you were raised better than to throw family out on the street." I pulled out my phone and texted my dad. "We need to talk. Now." He called me 2 minutes later. "What's going on?" he asked, like I hadn't just walked into a live-in betrayal. "She's living here." "I told you," he said defensively. "She had nowhere else to go. It's just for a few weeks, Nolan. She's my cousin. Our family. You couldn't have stored her at your house?" "Diane has the guest room," he muttered. "And the basement has a mold problem. Besides, your place has more room." My place. My house. That I paid for. That Layla and I worked overtime to buy. That we were supposed to be starting our marriage in, not hosting cousin Crystal Rooster. "I want her out," I said. "Nolan, be reasonable. She's already moved her stuff in. She's pregnant." I froze. "What?" "Yeah," he said. 6 weeks. She just found out. Poor thing's been through a lot. This was the least we could do. I turned to Layla. She could hear every word. Her face was pale. "You knew she was pregnant, and didn't mention that before letting her move in?" "She asked me not to say anything yet," Dad said casually. "Anyway, you two aren't using the guest room." Something in me snapped. "Dad," I said quietly, "you've got 1 hour to get over here and get her out. Or I will." "You wouldn't," he said. "Try me." I hung up and looked at Layla. "He's not coming. But I'm calling a lawyer." To her credit, Valerie didn't throw a tantrum when we told her she had to go. She just raised an eyebrow and said, "Wow. Heartless. Right after your honeymoon, too." She packed slowly, dramatically, like we'd just evicted a saint. My dad showed up an hour later, clearly fuming. "This is not how we treat family," he snapped. "No," I said. "This is how I treat people who violate my trust." Valerie slunk off with her boxes. My dad stayed behind, arms crossed. "She's pregnant, Nolan. I trusted you'd do the right thing. And I trusted you not to give away my house like a party favor." He stormed out. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like chasing him. Because Layla and we were finally alone. In our home. And I intended to keep it that way. 3 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text. Not a phone call. A letter, in one of those fancy linen envelopes my dad used for holiday cards, with my full name printed in all caps. Inside was a legal document. A notice of transfer request. Specifically, my father was petitioning for joint ownership of my home, claiming it had been a family asset intended for shared benefit, and that I had temporarily agreed to house his dependent cousin Valerie under good faith. I sat there on the steps with that letter in my hand and a numb, white-hot feeling rising in my chest. Layla came out with 2 mugs of coffee, one look at me, and froze. "What's wrong?" I handed her the letter. She read it once, then again. Then she blinked and said, "He's trying to take your house." "No," I said slowly. "He's trying to gift it to Valerie. Here's the thing, when I bought this house 3 years ago, before Layla and I even started dating, I asked my dad to co-sign the loan to help get better financing. My credit was fine, but his backing got me a lower rate. In exchange, he asked that his name be temporarily listed on the deed, just for the first year. He never took it off. I'd brought it up a few times. "We'll get it sorted," he'd say. "You're fine. I trust you." And stupidly, I trusted him. Turns out, he never removed himself from the deed, and now, he was claiming that half the house was his, and that I had, verbally agreed, to let family stay there whenever needed. Layla looked like she was ready to burn the city down. "This is war," she said. "I know. We lawyered up the next day. My attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Carla with sharp glasses and sharper instincts, looked over the letter and smirked. "He's bluffing," she said. "Trying to scare you. But the co-ownership on the deed gives him just enough of a foothold to be a problem. We'll file a motion to force a quitclaim. A quitclaim deed. Legal magic that could get my father off the title. If he agreed to sign it. But of course he didn't. Instead, he lawyered up too. Claimed that he'd contributed to the down payment. He hadn't. I had the wire transfers to prove it. Claimed that the family use of the home was a long-standing agreement. And worst of all, he doubled down on Valerie's situation. She filed her own motion. Swore under oath that I'd given her express verbal permission to inhabit the property indefinitely. Claimed she'd left her apartment on Nolan's invitation and had incurred emotional stress and financial hardship due to being forced to leave. She attached fake emails, screenshots of text threads that had been clearly edited, even a blurry voice memo of me saying, "Yeah, sure, you can stay for a bit." For a bit. Layla looked like she might physically combust. "She's trying to squat her way into a lawsuit," she muttered. And she wasn't wrong. The legal back and forth took 2 months. Valerie wanted relocation assistance. My dad refused to sign anything unless we apologized for how we treated her. And in every hearing, he sat beside her. Not beside me. The man who taught me to throw a baseball. Who patched up my scraped knees. Who once drove 90 minutes to replace a flat tire when I was in college, now sitting next to her like they were the real family. It was during one of those hearings that it happened. The judge, a tired-looking man in his 60s, turned to Valerie after her third emotional monologue. "Ms. Green, you mentioned stress. Financial loss. How long, exactly, did you reside in the home?" She blinked. 10 days, Your Honor." "And during that time, did you pay rent?" "No." "Did you have a lease?" "No, but—" "Were you asked to leave?" "Yes." Rudely. He raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Green, this is not a civil rights case. You do not have tenancy rights based on 10 days of couch surfing and a box of tea in the cupboard. Your request for damages is denied." She opened her mouth to speak, but he was already looking at my father. "As for Mr. Green, you are listed on the deed. However, the financial records presented clearly show the mortgage, taxes, and upkeep were solely paid by your son. You contributed 0 funds since the purchase. Is that correct?" My dad cleared his throat. "Technically, yes." "Then I suggest you remove yourself from the title immediately before this escalates into an equity dispute. Unless you want to start dividing appliances and light fixtures." Carla nudged me. Victory. After the hearing, I didn't even look at Valerie. I walked right up to my father. "You really picked her over me?" He didn't answer at first. Then, "You made me feel disposable, Nolan. Like my opinion didn't matter. So you tried to take my house?" "I didn't think you'd fight me this hard," he muttered. I laughed. "Cold. That's the problem, isn't it? You never thought I'd stand up for myself." He signed the quitclaim 2 days later. I changed the locks that afternoon. Valerie tried to message me once after that. A single line. "Hope it was worth destroying your family." I didn't reply. Because in a way, it was. After the quitclaim was finalized and my dad's name was legally removed from the title, something unexpected happened. Silence. Not triumphant silence. Not peaceful, clean slate silence. The hollow kind. The kind that follows an earthquake, when the dust is still hanging in the air and your ears are ringing. Layla noticed it first. She came into the kitchen one morning holding her phone, frowning. "Your dad unfriended me on Facebook." "Wow," I said flatly. "The digital guillotine. Truly the end of days." She didn't laugh. "Your Aunt Marcia liked one of Valerie's posts calling us homewreckers," she said. "Cool," I muttered. "Guess we're villains now." And we were. At least to that side of the family. In the weeks after the court decision, the whisper campaign began, quiet at first, then louder, and then full-on orchestrated. Valerie posted a long-winded Facebook rant about narcissistic younger relatives who exploit the elderly and steal generational wealth. conveniently omitting the part where she tried to stake a claim on a house she hadn't spent one dime on. She even changed her bio to fighter, survivor, advocate for displaced women. Layla nearly choked on her cereal when she saw it. "She's doing PR," she said. "Like she's a nonprofit now." Then came the texts. Not from my dad, he went full radio silence, but from the peanut gallery. "My cousin Taylor. I don't know what really happened, but Valerie's been devastated. Maybe you could reach out and clear the air? My Uncle Brian. I understand you were upset, but suing your own father? There had to be a better way." "Suing? I didn't sue him. I removed him from a deed he abused. But the damage was done. I was officially the ungrateful son now. Let them believe what they want," Layla said, ever the anchor in my ocean of rage. "But it ate at me. Because I wasn't raised like this. I was the kid who shoveled every neighbor's driveway. Who stayed up late helping my dad fix the porch light. Who called my grandmother every Sunday until the day she died. And now? People I'd hugged at weddings were treating me like I'd burned down an orphanage. Meanwhile, my actual life, the one inside the house I legally owned, was finally stabilizing. Layla painted the living room. Soft gray with forest green trim. "Color of closure," she joked. "We got a dog. A big clumsy lab named Otto who shed like he was allergic to his own fur but loved us like we were made of bacon. We hosted dinners with friends. Started planning for kids. We lived fully, completely, without interference for the first time. But then came the letter. I found it in the mailbox one evening. Thick envelope. No return address. Inside was a card. Plain white, cheap paper. The kind you find in the discount section of a gas station greeting card rack. Scrawled in my father's handwriting. "I hope you're proud of what you've done. You've alienated your family. You've turned your back on everything I gave you. Enjoy your house. I hope the walls are warm at night." There was no signature. Just that last line, bitter as poison. I put the card on the kitchen table, stared at it for a full minute. Layla read it and said nothing for a while. Then, "He doesn't want reconciliation. He wants submission." I nodded. "I know." I didn't respond. But a week later, I mailed something back. A photo. Just one. Layla and me on our porch. Otto at our feet. A glass of wine in my hand. The new flowers Layla planted blooming behind us. On the back I wrote, "The walls are warm. Thanks for asking. No return address." Let him sit with that. The real shift happened 2 months later, at a family funeral. My great-uncle Stanley died, a sweet old man who used to slip me candy during Passover and who once let me drive his Corvette around the block when I was 16. I wasn't going to skip his funeral just because the cousins were mad. Layla came with me. We wore black. We kept to ourselves. Until the reception, when he showed up. My dad. Still tall. Still composed. Still wearing the same watch I bought him for his 60th birthday. He looked older though. Not aged, exactly. Just deflated. Like someone had removed a battery from behind his sternum. He walked right past us at first. Then circled back. "Layla," he said stiffly. "Nolan." We nodded. Polite. Civil. He hovered for a second, then leaned in. "Your mother would have hated this." I blinked. "Hated what?" "This silence," he said, voice low. "This distance." I wanted to scream. "Then why did you build a bridge and burn it at the same time?" But Layla touched my wrist gently. So I said nothing. Just nodded again and walked away. Because some people confuse love with control. And some walls? They're built to keep you safe, not in. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Legal envelope. Registered mail. My name printed above a law firm I didn't recognize. I opened it on the porch, with Otto trying to eat the flap as I slid the paper out. Notice of estate allocation, Green Family Holdings. I blinked. Read it again. Apparently my grandfather, my dad's dad, had passed away quietly 2 weeks earlier. No funeral. No obituary. No calls. Just this piece of paper telling me I was named as a primary heir in his will. I nearly dropped the envelope. I hadn't seen Grandpa Harold in years. The man had been a presence during my childhood, gruff but kind, one of those World War II veterans who kept butterscotch in his pockets and stories in his eyes. After Grandma died, he'd kind of retreated. My dad stopped bringing him around. Claimed he was too far gone mentally. And didn't like to be bothered. I bought it. I had no reason not to. Until now. Because Grandpa Harold had clearly not been too far gone to write a will. One that included me, and excluded my father entirely. I skimmed the contents, my pulse rising. Grandpa had left me his cabin in the Catskills. A savings account containing $73,000. And the kicker, a handwritten note attached by the attorney, marked, "To Nolan." I unfolded it, my hands trembling. "Nolan, I don't know if you'll even read this. But if you do, I want you to know something your father won't tell you. He tried to cut you out. When I told him I wanted to leave the cabin to you, the only grandkid who ever helped chop firewood without whining, he told me you weren't family anymore. Said you disrespected him, sided with outsiders, and didn't deserve it. I told him to get off my porch. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. I saw what he was becoming. You built your own life. You stood your ground. You're the only one in this family who still knows how to build without stealing someone else's foundation. Take the cabin. Fix it up. Bring that wife of yours. Make new memories. And if your father ever calls you again, tell him I said. A good man doesn't try to win by default. He wins by being worth it. H.G. Layla found me 20 minutes later, sitting on the porch in total silence, the letter on my lap, Otto curled at my feet like a witness. You okay? She asked softly. I looked at her, then at the letter. No, I said. But I will be. We drove up to the cabin 2 days later. It was worn down, sure. Paint peeling. Porch sagging. A raccoon had clearly claimed squatters' rights in the attic. But the bones were still good. It sat on a quiet patch of land overlooking a lake, the same one where Grandpa used to teach me how to skip stones. Layla stood in the living room, sunlight cutting through the dust. This place feels like a reset button, she said. It's more than that, I said, staring at the mantel where Grandpa's old rifle used to hang. It's the first thing in my family that was given to me without strings attached. But peace was short-lived. Because 3 weeks later, I got an email from my dad's lawyer. Subject line: contesting of Green family will, preliminary notice. I opened it and instantly felt my chest tighten. He was challenging the will. Claiming undue influence. Alleging that Grandpa had been mentally unfit to allocate assets. That I'd manipulated a vulnerable old man into excluding his own son. Layla dropped her coffee mug. He's suing you again? Trying, I muttered. I forwarded the email to Carla, my lawyer. Her response was quick. He doesn't have a case. He's banking on intimidation again. But this time, we go public. And so we did. Carla filed a motion to dismiss with an attached affidavit from Grandpa's attending physician, a geriatric specialist who confirmed his mental fitness at the time the will was drafted. We submitted notarized documents, timeline charts, and even a video recording from Grandpa's 89th birthday, where he clearly stated, "My son's turned into a prick. Nolan's getting the cabin." Layla and I rewatched that clip 4 times. Mostly to laugh. A little to cry. Then came the hailstorm. My dad started leaking things to the family again. Claiming I'd forced Grandpa to sign over assets. That I was turning my inheritance into a revenge tour. And Marcia called. "So you're taking everything now?" Uncle Brian emailed. "Whatever beef you have with your father, punishing the whole family isn't the way." I didn't respond to any of them. But Valerie? Oh, she couldn't help herself. She posted a blog entry. A full-on Medium article titled, "What Happens When Greed Destroys Legacy, A Survivor's Tale." The first sentence? "When my cousin Nolan stole his grandfather's inheritance out from under the family, it confirmed what we all knew. He's obsessed with erasing the people who built him." Layla laughed so hard she cried. "You built yourself. They just keep trying to live in the house you made." The court tossed out my father's contest within a week. It was a clean win. Total. But by that point, it didn't feel like victory anymore. It felt like a funeral for the last shred of the relationship I still hoped we could one day repair. My father never reached out again. Not after the cabin, not after the court. He didn't even send a card when Layla and I announced she was pregnant that spring. And maybe that was the greatest gift he ever gave me. The permission to stop trying. Pregnancy changed everything. Not in the abstract, Hollywood montage way, but in the we have 8 weeks to fix the roof on the cabin or we're raising a child under moldy shingles way. Layla and I made a decision. We were going to make the cabin our permanent home. We sold our place in the city. The same house my dad once tried to gift wrap for Valerie like it was a hand-me-down sweater, and we poured every dollar into renovating Grandpa's place. The first hammer swing felt like an exorcism. Every nail I pulled, every board I replaced, it all felt like shaking off generational dust. My hands were blistered by week 2. Layla painted the nursery herself, her bump covered in specks of sage green. We named the baby Ellis. Gender neutral, timeless, strong. Otto slept under the crib like he already knew. We had no plans to tell the family. Not out of spite. Just peace. But peace has a funny way of knocking when it's not supposed to. Literally. It was a Tuesday. Rain on the tin roof. Layla was 6 months along, curled up on the couch with a book of baby names we'd already filled with sticky notes. Then, a knock on the front door. I opened it. And there she was. Valerie. In a trench coat, holding an umbrella, hair perfectly curled in that eerie way people have when they're about to deliver a monologue. I stared at her. You've got 3 seconds before I let the dog answer. Otto, as if on cue, padded up beside me with a low growl. I'm not here to fight, she said. I came to apologize. I blinked. Come again? She looked smaller. Not physically, just less. Like someone had popped the balloon that had kept her floating 5 feet off the ground for years. Can I come in? I looked back at Layla, who had now stood up, arms crossed, belly pronounced and radiant. If she says a single word about crystals, I'm launching her into the lake, she muttered. I let Valerie in. She sat gingerly on the edge of a wooden chair, like she expected it to break. Otto never stopped watching her. I know you don't believe me, she began. And I probably don't deserve for you to. But I lost everything. I didn't respond. My condo deal fell through. My boyfriend left. My job dried up when that blog post got me fired for defamation by association. And when I moved back in with your dad. You what? He needed someone, she said. After the lawsuit, the will stuff, he spiraled. Started drinking. Stopped answering calls. I was the only one who still spoke to him. I was still frozen on moved back in. She was living with him? After everything? I thought we could rebuild. She continued, voice suddenly shaking. But then, he got sick. I blinked. What do you mean sick? Liver failure. He's been in and out of the hospital for the last 6 months. Layla stepped forward now. And you're telling us this because... Valerie swallowed hard. Because he wants to see Nolan. He asked for you? I stared at her. He asked for me? After 2 lawsuits and a war over a house and telling the entire family I was some manipulative gold digger, now he wants to talk? He said he was wrong. No, I said. He said you were wrong. And you turned it into a campaign. She didn't deny it. There was something else in her eyes now. Not guilt. Not grief. Exhaustion. He doesn't have long, she said quietly. And I think part of him knows he torched everything good he had. Silence. Layla looked at me. Her hand slid into mine firm. I exhaled. I'll think about it, I said. Valerie nodded, stood up. I meant what I said, she added before walking out. About the apology. She didn't look back. That night, Layla curled into me under the quilt and whispered. You don't owe him anything. I know. But if you go for you. Not him. I nodded. 3 days later, I walked into the palliative ward of St. Mary's Hospital, alone. Dad was in a recliner, thin and pale, a nurse fixing his 4. He looked up. Blinking. Like maybe he wasn't sure if I was real. Nolan, he said, voice raspy. You came. I nodded, but didn't smile. He tried to sit up straighter. I don't. I don't have a speech. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I said. I just needed to see if you were still human. His eyes welled up. I messed everything up. Yeah, I said softly. You did. He closed his eyes. But I'm going to be a dad, I added. That made him look at me again. A daughter or a son? We don't know yet. He nodded. You'll be a better father than I was. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. I didn't forgive him. I didn't offer closure wrapped in a bow. But I stood there. For 5 minutes. Maybe 7. Until the nurse came in. Then I walked out. And I didn't look back. Ellis was born on a foggy morning in May. 7 pounds 2 ounces. A full head of dark hair. The kind of cry that cracked open something ancient in my chest. I held her against my chest in the hospital room, Layla asleep beside me, and for the first time in my life, I felt whole. No legacy hanging over me. No battles waiting outside. Just her. My daughter. My beginning. 3 days later, a package arrived at the cabin. No return address. Just my name, written in neat cursive I hadn't seen since childhood. Inside, a small wooden box. And a letter. Nolan. Your grandfather asked me to give this to you when your first child was born. He said it was the only inheritance that really mattered. M.L. Green, family attorney, retired. Inside the box, Grandpa's old compass. The same one I'd carried in my pocket during hikes. The one he'd said, "This will always point you home." Taped underneath, a Polaroid. Me, age 9, grinning beside him at the lake. Scrawled on the back, in Grandpa's unmistakable handwriting. Let her know where she came from. And show her where she's going. Love always wins. H. I sat on the porch holding Ellis against my chest, the compass warm in my palm. Layla came out, smiled, and whispered, "She's got your eyes." I smiled back. "No," I said. "She's got her own." Ellis turned 1 last week. She's walking now. Wobbling, really, hands out like a tiny drunk trying to negotiate with gravity, but walking all the same. And every step she takes across the porch of this old cabin feels like a quiet kind of triumph. Like maybe this place was never meant to be a legacy. Maybe it was always meant to be a beginning. We rebuilt everything here. Laid new floors. Rewired the whole back half. Painted every room with colors that felt like warmth. Layla hung fairy lights on the porch. I planted a lemon tree. Otto, now gray around the muzzle, still guards the front door like he's on salary. And the compass, Grandpa's, hangs above the fireplace. Right next to a black and white photo of him holding me at a lake, both of us barefoot and laughing. The other night, I found a letter in the attic. Tucked inside a shoebox of old fishing lures. It was addressed simply, "To my son, if you ever stop being a jackass." I sat on the floor and read it by flashlight. "Richard, if you ever find this, it means you finally went looking for something real. You spent your life chasing pride. Appearances. Ownership. I hope one day you understand, a man's worth isn't in what he owns. It's in what he gives. I gave Nolan the cabin not because he asked, but because he never needed to. He earned it when he was 9, standing knee-deep in lake mud, handing me a frog and calling it treasure. He saw value where you saw inconvenience. You taught him to fight. I hope I taught him to stand. H." I folded the letter back into its envelope, heart tight in my chest. Layla came to the doorway, Ellis perched on her hip, rubbing her eyes. I looked at them, my whole world in one frame, and whispered, "This house used to be theirs. But now it's ours. Completely." Layla smiled. "And one day, it'll be hers." We stood there, the 3 of us, surrounded by the creak of old beams, the smell of pine, and a silence that finally felt like peace. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of everything that matters.